Rhonda saw the online poll her daughter-in-law had posted about her. What's worse, her messy hair or her toxic personality? Even her daughter-in-law's mother was chiming in, making fun of her in the comments. Rhonda didn't cry. She didn't start a fight. She simply set down her coffee mug, walked into her home office and pulled out the thick blue binder. And from that exact moment, everything the two of them had been enjoying for free began to vanish. A single click in the morning changed everything. Rhonda, 61, was sitting in her bright kitchen in Cincinnati, sipping fresh drip coffee, when her tablet lit up with a notification. Her daughter-in-law, Kelsey, had uploaded a photo of Rhonda in the backyard, secretly taken, showing her looking disheveled after a morning of weeding. Underneath was a public poll. What's worse, her messy hair or her toxic personality? Kelsey's mother had already commented, "Both are a total nightmare." Time to set some boundaries, sweetie. Rhonda didn't get a lump in her throat, and she didn't cry. She looked around the kitchen. She owned the house she and her late husband had paid for in cash, and thought about the last 6 months. Ever since Kelsey and her son Dustin had moved into the upstairs apartment supposedly to save money on rent, Rhonda's presence in her own home had been systematically phased out. Dustin stayed silent through it all, while Kelsey called the shots. She dismissed Rhonda's organized lifestyle as old-fashioned and ignored every single house rule. Rhonda closed the tablet. She didn't argue. She didn't yell. Instead, she stood up, grabbed her thick blue binder from the office, and set it on the coffee table. Inside were the utility bills Kelsey and Dustin had forgotten to pay for 3 months alongside the savings account in Rhonda's name that had been quietly covering Dustin's car insurance. Dustin shuffled downstairs in his pajamas, his eyes glued to his phone. "Morning, Mom. Any bagels left?" Rhonda looked at him calmly. Her voice was steady, free of any bitterness. "No, Dustin. Starting today, everyone buys their own groceries. And we need to talk about the upstairs." Dustin flinched just as Kelsey walked into the kitchen phone, already in hand, a smug smirk on her lips. She had no idea Rhonda had already seen the poll. Kelsey poured herself some juice, completely ignoring Rhonda. "We have friends coming over tonight, Rhonda. It'd be great if you didn't blast the TV in the living room." Rhonda gave a faint smile. "You're going to have to change your plans," she said quietly. Kelsey froze her glass halfway to her mouth. "Excuse me? The invitations went out days ago." Rhonda stood up, rinsed her coffee mug in the sink, dried it carefully, and put it back in the cabinet. "The downstairs living room is my private space. You guys rent the top floor. I don't want guests in my part of the house tonight." Dustin looked nervously between the two women. "Come on, Mom, it's just for a few hours." "Don't be like that." Kelsey let out a dramatic theatrical sigh. Typical, always creating unnecessary drama over a little house rule. You are impossible to live with. Rhonda didn't take the bait. She walked to the entryway closet, grabbed her keys and her purse. "I'll be back at 2 o'clock. By then I expect all of your personal belongings out of my living room." She left the house without another word. It was a crisp May morning. Rhonda got into her compact car and drove straight to the bank downtown. At the ATM, it took her exactly 3 clicks to cancel the recurring transfer for Dustin's car insurance. Then she walked up to the teller window and closed the joint household account where she had been depositing a generous monthly allowance for the family groceries. From now on, her money was strictly her money. Next, Rhonda stopped by a hardware store and bought a heavy-duty combination lock for her cabinets, along with a small coffee maker for her own bedroom. She knew Kelsey often rummaged through her things to borrow items without asking. It wasn't about the money. It was about reclaiming control of her own space. When Rhonda pulled back into the driveway at exactly 2 o'clock, Kelsey's car was parked crookedly in the yard. The house was eerily quiet. On the kitchen table lay a note from Kelsey. "We're at my mom's. When you've calmed down, we can talk." Rhonda was completely at peace. She walked up to the interior door that led to the upstairs apartment. The connecting door had an old-fashioned skeleton key lock. Rhonda pulled out the key, which she had left in the door months ago to give the young couple their privacy, and slid it into her pocket. As of right now, the first floor was a locked unit. She then went down to the basement and installed the new combination lock on her private pantry where she kept the premium groceries and bulk laundry detergent. At 4 o'clock, Rhonda's phone buzzed. It was Dustin. "Mom, why isn't my gas card working? And my insurance company just texted me a past due notice." Rhonda's voice remained perfectly businesslike. "I've stopped the financial support, Dustin. You both work full-time. There is no reason I should be paying your fixed expenses." "But Kelsey already budgeted that money for our vacation," Dustin cried out in a panic. "That's no longer my concern," Rhonda replied, and hung up. 5 minutes later, a long text from Kelsey flashed on her screen. "This is childish and malicious. Just because we call you out on your flaws, you cut us off financially. My mom was right about you." Rhonda didn't type out an emotional response. She simply copied the link to Kelsey's social media poll and texted it back with a brief note. "Someone who holds a public vote on my appearance and character clearly doesn't need financial help from such an awful person. Good luck with the budgeting." There was no reply. When their car pulled into the driveway at 5 o'clock with tires screeching, Rhonda was sitting in her armchair with a book. The front door flew open. Kelsey stormed into the entryway, her face flushed with anger, followed by a visibly overwhelmed Dustin. They tried to march straight into the living room, but Rhonda had locked the connecting door from the inside. Kelsey rattled the doorknob violently. "Rhonda, open this door right now." "What is this stupid game?" Rhonda opened the window facing the front porch where Kelsey and Dustin were now standing, completely bewildered at having to use the side entrance. "Your entrance is around back up the exterior stairs," Rhonda said calmly through the open window. "The main front door is private from now on." Kelsey gasped in disbelief. "This is Dustin's childhood home. You can't just lock us out." "Dustin is a tenant on the top floor," Rhonda countered serenely. "The deed to this house is in my name. Your rent covers the upper rooms. The first floor is my home." Dustin looked down, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He knew his mother was legally in the right. Kelsey, however, was fuming. "We invited people over. They're going to be here in an hour." "Then you better let them know the party is upstairs," Rhonda said, sliding the window shut. She pulled the curtains. Inside, it was beautifully peaceful. She heard the heavy thud of their footsteps stomping up the wooden exterior stairs to the upper apartment. Shortly after, a loud banging echoed from above. Kelsey was clearly throwing furniture around in a rage. At 6 o'clock, the first guests arrived. Rhonda watched from the kitchen window as Kelsey intercepted them in the yard, looking deeply embarrassed as she guided them up the narrow, outside staircase. Once upstairs, space was tight. The upper apartment didn't have a kitchen, just a small coffee station, because Kelsey had always relied on using Rhonda's kitchen downstairs. It didn't take long for the first crisis to hit. Dustin knocked timidly on Rhonda's patio door, holding an empty baking dish. "Mom, Kelsey needs the oven for the lasagna. Our little toaster oven can't handle it. Can we just come down for a second?" Rhonda cracked the door open just an inch. She looked at Dustin, the boy she had protected his whole life, who had sat by and allowed her to be humiliated on the internet. "No, Dustin. My kitchen is closed tonight. You should have planned better. Dustin swallowed hard. Mom, Kelsey's mom is up there. She's saying some really awful things about you. Rhonda looked past Dustin's shoulder toward the upper deck, where Kelsey's mother was standing, arms crossed, glaring down at her. I don't care, Dustin, Rhonda said softly. The opinions of people who don't respect me hold zero weight anymore. Have a good night. She shut the patio door and locked it. The dinner party upstairs was clearly miserable. Rhonda could hear the muffled, tense murmur of voices through the ceiling. Without access to the main kitchen, Kelsey's elaborate dinner plans were a total disaster. Around 9 o'clock, the first guests left, hours earlier than intended. Kelsey's mother made sure to say goodbye by slamming her car door as loudly as humanly possible. The next morning, Sunday, the house remained dead silent until 10. Rhonda had already eaten breakfast, watered her plants, and was sitting out on the patio. She was soaking in the peace she had fought so hard to reclaim. Then she heard footsteps on the stairs. Kelsey came down this time without Dustin. Her expression was a mix of defiance and forced professionalism. We need to talk, Kelsey said, standing right in front of Rhonda's coffee table. Rhonda didn't offer her a seat. I'm listening. Kelsey cleared her throat. Yesterday was a total overreaction on your part. The poll was just a joke between friends, nothing more. You just don't have a sense of humor. But cutting off our money and banning us from the kitchen over, that is straight up extortion. Rhonda set her book down. She looked Kelsey dead in the eye. It's not extortion, Kelsey. It's the expiration of my good nature. You live in my house, use my resources, and try to publicly degrade me to make yourself feel powerful. If you want to keep living here, the rules have changed. Kelsey let out a bitter laugh. And if we don't follow your rules, what are you going to do? Rhonda stood up slowly. She was shorter than Kelsey, but her presence commanded the entire patio. If you don't accept the terms, you'll sign a 90-day notice to vacate tomorrow morning. I'll give you 3 months to find a new place. That's the legal requirement no lawyers needed. Kelsey stared at her. She had never expected Rhonda to utter the word eviction so nonchalantly. She had always assumed Rhonda was too afraid of being lonely to ever push them out. Dustin will never let you do that, Kelsey yelled. Dustin has no say in property ownership, Rhonda replied precisely. He is my son, but he is not a co-owner. Rhonda pulled a printed sheet of paper from her pocket and laid it on the table. Here are the new rules. First, rent is going up by $100 a month to cover the increased utility costs. Second, access to the first floor is permanently restricted unless I explicitly invite you. Third, you handle your own laundry and groceries. The laundry room is only available to you on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to noon. Kelsey skimmed the bullet points. The color drained from her face. Up until now, Rhonda had frequently done their laundry, ironed their clothes, and signed for their packages. This is pure harassment, Kelsey cried. No, this is separating our households, Rhonda said. You wanted independence and found my presence annoying. Now you have total independence. Kelsey spun on her heel and stormed upstairs. Rhonda could hear her loudly screaming at Dustin through the ceiling. Dustin's voice sounded defensive. Kelsey's was shrill. Rhonda sat back down and finished her coffee. She knew the hardest part was still to come. Dustin's reaction when he realized his comfort zone had been permanently dismantled. Late that afternoon, Dustin came down alone. He knocked on the kitchen door. When Rhonda opened it, he looked exhausted. Mom, can we please just talk like normal people? Kelsey's upstairs crying. She says you're ruining our marriage. Rhonda stepped aside to let him into the kitchen, but immediately shut the door behind him. Sit down, Dustin. He sat at the table where he had eaten for 25 years. Mom, the internet post was stupid of her. Okay, she was just mad about how the yard looked. But you're totally overreacting. You took away the insurance money, the grocery allowance. We can barely afford to make it through the month. Dustin, Rhonda said, her voice motherly but firm. You make good money at the auto shop. Kelsey works part-time at the office. Why can't you afford to live? Dustin looked down at his calloused hands, embarrassed. Kelsey ordered a new leased car, and we booked a trip to Cabo. We just thought you'd help us out like you always do. I helped you as long as I felt appreciated, Rhonda explained. But I am not an ATM that you get to insult after you withdraw the cash. You took my kindness for weakness. Dustin shook his head. I told Kelsey to take the picture down, and she did. The picture is gone, but the attitude remains, Rhonda said unyieldingly. If you want to save your marriage, you need to teach your wife how to respect the people she relies on financially. The rent increase starts on the first of the month. Dustin realized that no amount of whining was going to work. His mother was no longer the soft-hearted woman who smiled through the disrespect. He stood up and walked out without another word. The week rolled on. Rhonda stuck strictly to her new boundaries. On Tuesday, when the Amazon driver rang the doorbell, trying to drop off 3 large boxes for Kelsey, Rhonda shook her head. You'll have to take those back or take them to the sorting facility. The neighbors upstairs aren't home, and I don't sign for packages anymore. The driver looked confused but loaded them back into his truck. That evening, the next blowout occurred. Kelsey came running down the outside stairs in a fury just as Rhonda was rolling the trash cans out to the curb. You rejected my designer shoes. They sent them to a pickup locker on the other side of town. I had to drive 20 minutes out of my way after work to get them. Rhonda aligned the recycling bin neatly with the curb. I am not your mailroom Kelsey. If you're expecting packages, you need to update your delivery instructions for the upstairs unit. Kelsey clenched her fists. You've become so incredibly bitter since Dad died. He would turn over in his grave if he saw how you were treating his son. The words were meant to cut deep, but they bounced right off Rhonda. She remembered exactly what her husband had told her before he passed. Don't let anyone push you around, Rhonda. She looked at Kelsey calmly. If my husband were alive, he would have told Dustin months ago to act like a man and pay his own bills. Please, get out of my way. Kelsey involuntarily took a step back. The sheer coldness and determination in Rhonda's eyes startled her. She realized that none of her emotional weapons worked anymore. No guilt trip landed. No insult left a mark. Rhonda walked back inside and locked the door. 5 hours later, the situation would reach its absolute breaking point when Dustin had to look over the bills for their joint car lease. It was Thursday evening when Dustin knocked frantically on Rhonda's window. It was pouring rain. Mom, please, it's urgent. The dealership called. The automatic lease payment bounced because the account didn't have enough funds. They're going to repossess the car. Rhonda cracked the window open slightly. That account doesn't exist anymore. Dustin, I withdrew my portion. Your father and I always told you only buy what you can pay for in cash. You signed that lease in your name, not mine. Kelsey came running down the stairs, a tiny umbrella barely shielding her from the downpour. Dustin, what is she saying? Can we get the money from her or not? Dustin turned on her, his voice cracking under the stress. No, Kelsey. There is no money. We have to give the car back or cancel the vacation. I told you we couldn't afford any of this without Mom's help. Right there in the pouring rain outside Rhonda's window, the facade of the young couple's perfect life completely crumbled. Kelsey started screaming at Dustin, calling him a loser who couldn't stand up to his mother. For the first time, Dustin snapped back at the top of his lungs. "You're the one who got us into this mess with your stupid internet poll." She saw the whole thing. Kelsey went dead silent. She looked up at the window where Rhonda stood with her arms crossed coolly, watching the entire spectacle. That was the exact moment Kelsey realized she had lost everything: the free housing, the luxury car, the financial safety net, and the leverage. 5 hours after the bank payment failed, the two of them sat dejectedly in their cramped upstairs apartment, aggressively scratching lines through their budget with a red pen. 3 weeks later, peace had finally returned to the house. The leased car was gone, replaced by an older used sedan that Dustin had bought with his own savings. The trip to Cabo had been canceled. On the first Saturday of the month, the increased rent and utility money was sitting promptly in Rhonda's mailbox, cash exact change. Kelsey had made herself practically invisible around the house. Whenever she ran into Rhonda in the yard, she offered a quiet, timid greeting, lowered her eyes, and quickly hurried along. The online poll had long been deleted, and Kelsey had completely stopped posting anything involving the family on social media. Her pride was broken, but the lesson had been learned. On a sunny day in June, Rhonda was sitting out on her patio. She had gone to the salon that morning and gotten a fresh haircut, a chic, texturized bob that suited her beautifully. On the table sat a freshly baked strawberry pie she had made from scratch. She took in the quiet of the yard, the humming of the bees, and the absolute certainty that her home was her peaceful sanctuary once again. Dustin walked down the exterior stairs. He was wearing his work uniform and looked sharper, more put together than usual. He didn't slouch anymore. "Hey, Mom, that pie smells amazing." Rhonda looked at him and felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. He was finally learning what it meant to take responsibility. "Would you like a slice, Dustin?" she asked gently. Dustin offered a faint smile. "I'd love one, Mom, but only if you let me make the coffee. Kelsey's staying upstairs today. She's working on our monthly budget." Rhonda gave a simple nod. She sliced into the pie. The boundaries had been drawn, and the hierarchy was clear. Life was running by her rules again.